an interview with Gabe Cazares. That's cute. You alright? Okay. Can you cast your mind now back to 1975? What happened when the Scientologists came to Clearwater, and how did local people react?
Well, I think that it's fair to say that people did not know enough about them when they first came in. They withheld judgment. It's only after it was discovered that this group that came in under secret orders was something other than what they said they were that they reacted.
Well, tell me about how they came in under secret orders. How did it happen?
Well, I was mayor of Clearwater when they first arrived. Their public relations people came in and said, "We're very happy to be in Clearwater. We're moving into the Fort Harrison Hotel. We are United Churches of Florida." I'd been very closely connected with the churches, and I'd never heard of them. And then they said, "We're leasing from Southern Leasing and Land Corporation." I was a stockbroker. I never heard of them. So immediately the alarms started going on.
And how did they expand their operations here? How did things then progress?
Well, of course, I think you have to mention the classified orders that brought them to Clearwater, because that's what it's all about. The orders, in effect, were occupation orders. There was a secret project, gold mine, and a project, Normandy, and these orders, in effect, very clearly stated, move into this area, find out who your friends are, develop them, find out who your enemies are, destroy them, and then move into every possible area of community life, business, social, religious, education. And there was no problem up till then, until we started raising questions about how a group that is supposed to be a religious group would come in with a paramilitary force. I'm a veteran of 28 years military service, and I know something about these things. They were walking patrols up in a Fort Harrison hotel, which was their headquarters, and it just so happened that the day the Scientology publicity propaganda minister came in to talk to me about it, he says, "What do you got about against Scientology?" I says, "Well, the first thing that concerns me is the fact that you've gone into some of our churches," and they had betrayed the ministers. They'd lied to them about who they were. Then the other thing I said was, "We've got armed guards here. Why would a church need armed guards?" And then they finally said, "Okay, so we are Scientologists." As soon as that became known, and the fact that they came in under secret orders, then the public took a very bad reaction toward them.
Right, so having gone through the operations there, how did they end up expanding their operation here? How big did they become?
Well, they haven't ended up there. It's a new purchase of property. They now have over $30 million of property. Most of it has been taken off the tax rolls. Most of it in the central historical part of Clearwater, and they're now talking about building what I call the biggest brainwashing factory in the world in downtown Clearwater. They've got this before the city commission at this time, and I hope they defeat it, because what government would in effect be doing would be giving license to this destructive cult to get some of the finest minds from all over the world, bring them into Clearwater and brainwash them and waste them. These are young people from Britain and from Germany and from everywhere that really ought to be preparing for education. They ought to be going to the universities, but instead Clearwater is part of the reason that they can get away with it here. I don't think they could. Germany won't permit that. Germany won't let the Scientologists pull in people from all over the world and waste their talents. But Clearwater's doing it, and it's a shame on us. It's a shame on America for tolerating it.
Just getting ourselves back in the time frame, can you just describe for me how they began buying up properties and how they've ended up? I know there's a lot of Main Street is them and a lot of, just give an idea of how that happened.
All right. They did something that they've continued to do, and that is when they covet some prime property in our downtown area, they generally get someone else to buy it for them, some attorney from out of town or some buyer from out of town. I know that there was one case where they wanted to buy some property that housed the FBI field offices in Clearwater, and also it was the Heart of Clearwater Motel. And when the owner, who's a very prominent, respected businessman from Newport Richey, found out they were Scientologists, the deal fell through, and he got rid of the property, but the people he sold it to turned around and sold it to the Scientologists. So they got what they wanted. They got these two, this Heart of Clearwater Motel, but they've done that with other properties. They bought property from the Benevolent Protective Association that they had, best people on earth, and they're using that now as one of their facilities. They bought property from the police union, and the Scientologists have been very critical of the police in this town. They're really undermining respect for law and order, and still the union of police officers sold this property very recently to the Scientologists. But they're doing this. This has been their pattern, and the one thing I did when I first realized that they were buying more than the Fort Harrison Hotel and the Bank of Clearwater, I asked them if they had a master plan. They have not produced a master plan, but every time they acquire additional property, they say, this is all we need. We don't intend to buy any other property, but as is clear, if you look at a map of Clearwater, you find out that they have the prized properties, and they continue to expand on the waterfront and elsewhere.
Okay. What happened to people who opposed them when they first came? Tell me about what happened to people who actually opposed them.
Well, the Scientologists have been quick to take legal action against anyone that they oppose, or even anyone who even looks like they want to oppose Scientology. There's a report by Time about the cult of greed that said that they had a budget of approximately, I think it was $20 million a year, just to fund 100 attorneys that they use for litigation. They use that freely. They'll sue anyone at the drop of a hat. There are some people that, on a matter of principle, will say, I think and feel this way about Scientology, and I'm going to state my opinion. But then there are some that have mortgages and car payments to make, and they can't afford to be sued. They just can't afford to be sued, and the Scientologists know it, and it's a psychological weapon that they have to intimidate people.
Okay. And just remember, you're getting a little long in your answers. Okay. Why do people oppose them? What is it? What's the problem that they see with them?
I think the fact that they see them for what they really are. They see the Scientologists as a group that is trying to take over the education of the children in this area. The fact that they're having an adverse effect on tourism, because I don't think anyone wants to bring their children in here if they feel that a cult is going to be taking them over. I think the fact that they're taking property off the tax rolls. But the main thing that they ought to be upset about, that doesn't seem to bother them too much, is the fact that they're getting some of our finest young people and getting them through the clear courses and through the operating Thetan courses and brainwashing them and taking them away from society and their families and communities. That's the real sin of Scientology. It's an evil organization.
So, Gabe, how far has their plan, Operation Snow White, which supposedly had stopped with the court case, how far actually have they got with it?
Well, let's say that fortunately the FBI got into the act, learned about Project Snow White, and they sent 150 FBI agents, the biggest contingent of FBI agents ever involved in one case, to their headquarters, the Scientology headquarters in Washington, L.A., and they took over 43,000 documents, most of them stolen from government offices. They had infiltrated almost every major office in Washington, D.C., and other local offices in carrying out Project Snow White. And for this, their entire top leadership was investigated, convicted, and sent to jail. L. Ron Hubbard was an unindicted co-conspirator. And despite this, it's unbelievable that after this court case, that the Scientologists have been able to bounce back, and now it appears that they're stronger than ever, having defeated the IRS. That matter is still under investigation, how they ever received an IRS ruling after having committed the biggest conspiracy in history against the U.S. government. It's a real mystery. I think right now that the U.S. government ought to investigate them for destroying our foreign policy, because they are doing more damage in every country in the world by just being there and carrying out their programs and all the good that the State Department ever wished. And I think the German government ought to be commended for recognizing this threat to not only their citizens, but to citizens throughout the world. We owe them a debt of gratitude. The State Department committed a major blunder when they criticized them for that.
But you were saying to me a moment ago that despite the court case, they actually are still infiltrating and they have people in high levels.
Oh, very, very definitely. Here in Florida, they got a proclamation from the governor having him commend a school that is a Scientology school based on a recommendation from a Scientology friend organization. But they're asking different housing agencies, Head Start and other programs to use the teaching methods of L. Ron Hubbard, and this is very dangerous. Here's a man who was not an educator. He was a science fiction writer. But education has gone a long ways from the time he was involved. And still in California, they've got friends in high places that got the State Board of Education to approve textbooks written by Scientology. And in Los Angeles, they're trying to get charter schools approved that'll use the Scientology techniques. But they're in every aspect of life.
Okay, I just finally want to ask you, cast your mind back now to 75, when they first arrived in Cognito, United Churches of Florida. What did Hubbard himself do when they first came here? Did he go around openly being Hubbard or what? Tell me about that.
He hid, primarily.
Can you say who we were talking about here? Hubbard hid. Okay.
Yes, Hubbard hid. I've never seen him. And he was in the area. We knew where he was. They found him at King Arthur's residence in Dunedin, Florida. And he used the Fort Harrison Hotel to some extent. But as soon as we blew his cover and showed that the Scientologists were in, this got too hot for him, and he started heading for California to Hammett, where David Miscavige holds court now. But he did go into some of our churches, and we got photographs of him there photographing their services, but this is after telling them that they were United Churches of Florida and that they had come to work with them to improve the moral climate of the area. The moral climate has never been worse, and I attribute a lot of this to Scientology.